What if I told you that foolishness isn't always loud, rude, or dramatic, but often hides quietly in everyday habits? Would you recognize a foolish person if they were your boss, your friend, or worse, yourself? Let's uncover 6 invisible signs of foolishness that silently sabotage growth and how you can break free. In all my years walking this earth, watching people, learning from their decisions, and sometimes from their downfalls, I've come to understand a truth that many overlook. Intelligence isn't about how many books you've read, how many degrees you hold, or how quick you are with answers. True intelligence lies in how you live, how you treat others, and most importantly, how you learn from your mistakes. But here's the twist. There are unmistakable behaviors, 6 to be exact, that expose when someone is not just lacking information, but lacking wisdom. And these signs, they're subtle, silent, and often self-destructive. Before you roll your eyes or scoff, thinking this is another list meant to shame others, pause. This is not about judgment. It's about growth, awareness, and a chance to become wiser, both for yourself and for the people around you. Sometimes recognizing these patterns in others can also help us guide them, gently, out of cycles they don't even realize they're trapped in. So if you're ready, walk with me. Together we'll discover the 6 telltale signs of a foolish person. Each one is not just a red flag, but a mirror, a lesson, and a stepping stone to something greater. Sign 1. A closed mind. A closed mind is the fortress of ignorance, brick by brick, built from fear, ego, and stubbornness. People like this don't just resist change. They wage war on anything unfamiliar. New ideas, rejected. New methods, laughed at. Growth. Impossible. They live in a rigid box where certainty is king, and anything that challenges their worldview is treated as a threat. Let me tell you about Mark, a department manager I once worked with. He was good at his job. At least he thought he was. Mark clung to the old ways like a sailor to a sinking ship when a young employee proposed a brilliant idea. Let's try modern project management software to speed things up. Mark's response: "We've done it this way for 10 years. It works fine." But guess what? Other teams embraced change. They improved. They thrived. Mark's team, they lagged, they missed deadlines, and morale crumbled. Instead of adapting, Mark blamed his staff, the economy, even fate. But never, not once, did he question his own mindset. The problem wasn't the team. It was Mark's unwillingness to evolve. And when leaders think like that, they don't just limit themselves, they become the ceiling for everyone under them. In Stoic philosophy, we're reminded, wisdom doesn't come from always being right. It comes from having the humility to admit we could be wrong and the courage to improve. So ask yourself, have you ever shut down a new idea out of pride or fear? Do you know someone like Mark? If so, don't shame them. Help them see the light. And if that someone is you, don't worry. You've just taken the first step toward wisdom. Now let's move on to the next sign. Sometimes the only thing standing between a person and true wisdom is the courage to let go of their ego. We just saw how a closed mind can stall not only one's growth, but also the growth of everyone around them. But stubbornness doesn't always look like refusal. Sometimes it wears a louder, more dramatic mask, like blame. Chapter Sign 2. Constant blaming. Blaming others might feel like a defense, but in reality, it's a trap, a beautiful cage made of excuses. Foolish people are often experts at rewriting the narrative to protect themselves. No matter what goes wrong, it's always someone else's fault. A failed project? The market was too competitive. A missed promotion. The boss is biased. But deep down, you and I know the truth. Blaming is a shield, a way to avoid the discomfort of self-reflection. But here's the irony. What starts as a shield becomes a prison. Let me tell you about Lisa. She was an event organizer I worked with on a high-stakes corporate conference. Everything was riding on this event. Prestige, partnerships, even bonuses. But when the day came, attendance was shockingly low. Before anyone could blink, Lisa pointed fingers at the marketing team. They didn't promote it enough, she insisted, her voice filled with frustration. But the real story? Lisa had failed to submit the event details on time. The marketing department had no choice but to delay campaigns because they had nothing to promote. And even when this was brought to light, Lisa stood her ground, refusing to take responsibility. The aftermath? Her teammates lost trust. Collaboration dried up, and eventually, Lisa stepped down. Not because others demanded it, but because leadership without responsibility is like a ship without a compass, doomed to drift. Here's what wise people understand. Responsibility isn't easy. It's heavy, sometimes painful. But it's the gateway to growth. They don't admit fault because they enjoy being criticized. They admit it because truth is the soil where improvement takes root. In Stoic philosophy, there's a lesson that echoes through time. You cannot control all events, but you can always control your response. So if you catch yourself falling into the trap of blame, pause. Ask yourself honestly, did I truly do everything I could? Could I have handled it differently? Blame won't change the outcome, but ownership. Ownership changes you, and it earns you the one thing foolishness never can, respect. So, what will you choose? Because the path to greatness starts where the excuses end. Sign 3. Arrogance over humility. Now let's talk about a trait that hides behind fake confidence. A trait that speaks the loudest, but listens the least. Arrogance. Have you ever met someone who constantly tries to prove they're the smartest person in the room? They interrupt, they belittle, they dominate. That's not strength. That's fear pretending to be power. Let me introduce you to Michael, a senior manager at a large corporation. Every meeting felt like his stage. If someone presented a new idea, Michael would cut them off. If a junior colleague offered insight, he'd mock it. He always had the last word and made sure everyone knew it. But then the company launched a product that flopped. Badly. Sales tanked, clients pulled out, and what did Michael do? He blamed his team. He said they didn't execute his vision properly. But behind closed doors, everyone knew. Michael never listened to feedback. He never collaborated. He confused control with competence. Here's the truth. Arrogance isn't leadership. It's insecurity in disguise. Truly wise people know that knowledge isn't about dominating a room. It's about learning from the people in it. Because when you listen, you grow. And when you grow, others grow with you. Arrogance silences growth. But what comes next can sever connection entirely. The absence of empathy. We just saw how arrogance blinds people to feedback and growth. But when that arrogance is coupled with a lack of empathy, it doesn't just damage projects. It destroys trust, relationships, and even one's own humanity. Sign 4. Lack of empathy. One of the clearest signs that someone lacks true wisdom is this: they can't or won't step into someone else's shoes. They don't pause to understand what others feel. They don't ask, what might this person be going through? Instead, they live behind emotional walls, disconnected from the people around them. Let me tell you about Paul, a colleague I worked with years ago. Paul was efficient, he was punctual, he was results-driven. But he had a glaring blind spot: zero empathy. He constantly complained about delays without asking why they happened. He didn't care what obstacles others faced, only that tasks were delivered on time. One day, a teammate named Susan missed a key deadline. The reason? Her son had been hospitalized due to a serious illness. She barely had time to sleep, let alone submit project reports. But Paul didn't care. He publicly criticized her during a team meeting, cold, sharp, and without a hint of compassion. "Excuses don't meet deadlines," he said. The room went silent. Susan, visibly shaken, left the room without saying a word. She later completed her tasks, but something had shifted. The trust, the emotional bond, it cracked. Now here's the twist. A year later, Paul found himself in a similar situation. His mother, elderly and unwell, needed constant care. Paul missed a few meetings, slipped on some deadlines, and suddenly, he understood. He remembered Susan. He remembered his harsh words, and for the first time he realized how blind he had been. You see, a lack of empathy doesn't just make someone seem cold. It makes them blind to the lessons that relationships teach. Empathy isn't about being overly emotional. It's about recognizing that everyone is fighting a battle we can't always see. In Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I'm about to criticize?" True wisdom comes not from standing above others, but from standing beside them. Without empathy, even the most talented people become isolated. They lose the ability to build meaningful relationships. And in time, their brilliance becomes irrelevant because no one wants to work beside a cold heart. But here's the good news. Empathy can be learned. It begins with a pause, a question, a willingness to understand. So ask yourself, am I listening to respond or to understand? Am I judging or trying to connect? Because in the end, empathy is not weakness. It is the bridge to wisdom, compassion, and trust. And it is the fourth sign that separates the foolish from the truly wise. In the last part, we talked about the power of empathy, the ability to connect deeply with others by listening without judgment. But there's another quality that often hides behind comfort and caution, one that silently prevents countless people from growing. Sign 5, the fear of change. The comfort zone. It feels warm, safe, familiar. But let's be honest, it's also a trap. People who fear change tend to hold on tightly to the old ways, even when those ways no longer serve them. They stick to outdated routines, familiar surroundings, or worn-out beliefs, not because they're the best, but because they're comfortable. They're like children afraid of the dark, peeking out but too nervous to step forward. But life doesn't wait. It flows like a river, twisting, turning, constantly evolving. And while the wise learn to swim with its currents, the foolish try to hold water in their fists, only to watch it slip through their fingers. Let me introduce you to Michael, not the same Michael from before, but another one. Michael spent his entire life in the same small neighborhood. He knew every neighbor, every tree, every squeaky floorboard in the grocery store. When his grown children suggested moving to a more vibrant area with better opportunities and health care, Michael refused. "I know everyone here," he said. "Why would I start over somewhere else?" But then, life changed, without asking for his permission. Old friends moved away, shops closed down, familiar faces disappeared. And Michael was left behind, in the very place he once loved. Eventually, he gave in and moved closer to his children. And to his surprise, the new neighborhood was welcoming. He made new friends, discovered new hobbies, and felt more connected than he had in years. The very change he had feared became the gateway to a better life. You see, fear of change doesn't just hold us in the safe zone. It blinds us to the potential just beyond it. Stoic philosophy teaches us change is not the enemy, it's the teacher. It challenges us to grow, to adapt, to expand beyond what we think we're capable of. So the next time you feel the urge to resist change, pause. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? But more importantly, what's the best that could happen? Because life doesn't stand still. And those who fear change often wake up one day to realize the world has moved on without them. Change is not a threat. It's an invitation to evolve, to rediscover, and to thrive. Sign 6, talking more than listening. Now let's move to a behavior that's as common as it is destructive, especially in families, friendships, and teams. Have you ever had that one family member who just won't stop talking? They dominate every conversation. They interrupt constantly. They seem allergic to silence, and even more allergic to listening. They love the sound of their own voice, and in doing so, they miss the valuable insights others could offer. This isn't just annoying, it's a sign of foolishness. Wise people know the value of listening, because when you truly listen, you learn. Now let me share with you a story that brings this sign to life, a story that's more common than you might think. The story of John. John was a father I once knew, hardworking, dedicated, and deeply proud of his family. But he had one blind spot that cost him dearly. He didn't know how to listen. Every evening at dinner, John would dominate the table like it was a stage. His kids would try to share stories about their day, what happened at school, something funny a teacher said, or a small victory in sports. But John, he'd interrupt, steer the conversation back to himself, and start recounting stories from his youth, his job, or some life lesson he thought they needed to hear. At first, his family listened out of respect, but slowly their excitement to speak faded. Their voices got quieter, and their eyes drifted toward their plates. His wife, too, had ideas, especially when they faced financial difficulties. She gently suggested new ways to budget, perhaps cutting back on luxuries or trying out a side business. But John shut it down. "My way works, end of story," he'd say. He wasn't angry or mean, just convinced that his voice mattered more. The sad part? John never noticed what was happening. He didn't see how unheard and unvalued his family felt. His inability to listen built invisible walls, separating him from the people he loved most. Listening isn't passive, it's powerful. Listening isn't about staying quiet until it's your turn to speak. It's an active practice, one that requires presence, patience, and genuine interest. Stoic philosophy reminds us, the wise man is silent not because he has nothing to say, but because he knows when to listen. In silence, we don't just hear others, we understand them. We offer them space to be seen, to feel respected, and to feel safe. On the other hand, talking without listening is like throwing seeds on a concrete floor. Nothing will ever grow there. If you see yourself in John's story, don't feel ashamed. Feel empowered, because now you know what needs to change. Chapter The Call to Change. Next time your child starts telling you about their day, pause. Look them in the eyes. Listen, not just to reply, but to truly connect. When your spouse shares a thought, don't prepare a counterpoint. Prepare to understand. These small shifts in listening can transform a household. They can turn silence into bonding, distance into intimacy. Because at the end of the day, the wise listen, and the foolish They just wait for their turn to speak. The bigger picture. So now we've walked through the 6 unmistakable signs of a foolish person. And maybe, just maybe, you're asking yourself, wait, have I done some of these things? Let me stop you right there. The truth is, we all have. At some point, we've been closed-minded. We've blamed others. We've resisted change, acted arrogant, failed to empathize, or talked over someone else. And you know what? That's okay. Because this video isn't about judging you. It's about awakening you. Stoic philosophy teaches us that wisdom doesn't mean always being right. It means always being willing to learn. Each sign of foolishness, it's not a flaw, it's a lesson. It's a mirror showing you where to grow. So if any part of this message resonated with you, don't push it away. Lean into it. Step out of your comfort zone. Listen more. Blame less. Embrace change. This journey of becoming wiser, it's not for the perfect. It's for the brave. Those who can look themselves in the mirror and say, I can do better. Remember, foolishness is a moment. Wisdom is a path. And on this path, you're not alone. So keep walking. Keep learning. And if this video brought you value, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep growing together. Thank you for watching.